Hey, it's Jacob Perry back with you for episode 27 on this vlog we're doing on Patagonia, on honey, on beekeeping, and on how we're doing business at Patagonia Bee Products. So today I actually want to talk about the price of real honey. This topic has been getting a lot of traction lately because of a new Netflix series. This is actually what sparked me want to talk about this. A Netflix series that's out, it's called Rotten, and they expose rotten business practices. And the first episode is about honey. And this is something that I personally have known about for a few years. When I really dived into all of this, looking at what is actually happening on an international scale with honey, all the adulteration that happens. And but this episode does a really good job of illustrating what's going on, giving details, showing people, showing how, showing to what extent honey is adulterated. And this just had me thinking, because at some of our demos, when we do samplings, people every now and then, a lot of people will most people taste the honey and they get it. They hear the story, they think this product is amazing, the story is amazing. We understand this isn't going to be the cheap bear honey. But every now and then somebody will say, well, why is the bear honey cheaper, or why does it have a lower price, right? And or just like a generic jar of honey. And for me it's very clear, but of course for the consumer who's not in the honey industry, that that seems like it's kind of an arbitrary price increase. So I want to talk to you about the price of real honey, which is what we have and which is what we do. It came out in Rotten, and there's an independent report a few years ago, and this has just been something that's actually it's been well discovered and known over the last decade, 2 decades, is all the adulteration in the honey industry. And basically what that means, for those of you who this is totally new to, it means that honey at an international scale, largely the honey getting imported into the United States, was adulterated. It had syrups added to it. So you have a certain amount of honey, and then you add certain syrups, and then nobody knows the difference. And the consumer doesn't know the difference, the FDA doesn't know the difference, and it gets and the syrup is much, much, much cheaper to produce. So then this largely was happening from China, where a lot of honey was getting imported at very low prices from China. American producers couldn't compete. Other international producers couldn't compete, which, by the way, the United States imports 80% of its honey consumption, the honey consumed. So we're dependent on foreign honey. Right, we don't produce enough in the United States, so that was one thing. And so they're bringing in and importing this really cheap honey, and so that's part of why we're used to exaggeratedly low prices. Those are not real prices of real honey that we're used to in the United States for our honey. We've been duped for a long time, and so now we are used to a very low price. And when we see a honey that has a higher price tag, we think, well, that's the company's either making too much profits, or something's going on here that's not right. Well, I want to talk to you about the real price of honey. So the way we operate, we get every jar from a single beekeeper in a single harvest. We call it hive to hand. This is the most natural way that honey is going to be produced outside of a wild hive. So every single harvest will be unique and different. It goes from hand labor of the beekeeper, putting on a bee suit, getting stung, right, harvesting the honey, transporting it, him or herself, to the plant, the extraction plant. More humans are extracting it by hand, and we've just gone down and filmed all this process, and we'll be releasing some of it little by little, so you guys can actually see this whole process. Extracting it by hand with these little scrapers, and then put it into a centrifuge, getting all the honey out of the frames. That goes through a little mesh filter, so we barely filter it. That's why the honey is still thick and has little pieces of pollen. We'll have pieces of wax, royal jelly, propolis, stuff like that. And ultimately jarred by hand by beekeepers. Now, some more of this can be operated. There are beekeeping operations that operate that automate more of this. But ultimately, we do. It's a very mom and pop artisanal method that our beekeepers are using, and the honey is superb. The beekeepers are doing an extremely meticulous job of harvesting at precise moments, so they get monofloral varieties, very unique varieties. You don't just randomly and luck into harvesting these really high percent ulmo and tiaca and tineo and alfalfa chilota honeys that we do and offer our consumers. that takes a lot of precision and care and an extra work. And so ultimately, we also pay our beekeepers living wages, good wages, right? We pay the cooperative of beekeepers enough so that they are able to be sustainable. The beekeepers are able to earn decent, dignified wages for their work, so that they're not working their butts off with the hives and then living in poverty, so that the honey can be cheaply sold to American consumers. That's not why we exist or what we care about. I'm as a CEO and founder of this company, I'm not interested in creating more financial stress on hardworking beekeepers in Patagonia just so American consumers can enjoy a cheap honey. That's not why I started the company. So we do pay the beekeepers higher wages than international standards, which are very low. These are things we all went through when we were in Chile. We looked at international wages. We looked at what the big exporting companies are paying beekeepers. It's unbelievably low. It's not enough to live on. But the beekeepers are often forced into that because they don't have an alternative. But now they do with us, and they're very happy to be part of the cooperative selling to us as an exporter, or really as an importer here in the United States. So all of that has a cost. Then the freight has a cost, right? And we don't mark the honey up tremendously when we get it here. We try to maintain an industry average profit so that we as a company can survive and be sustainable. Because if we're not sustainable, we can't keep buying honey. The beekeepers don't get the money for it. The cooperative has a harder time existing. So it's all a circle. It's all interconnected. So that all means that our honey is the price it is when you see it on our website or when you see it at a store. And different stores will have their own margins they got to charge. So that's why you see some variance. But this is the price of real honey. We cannot get it to you cheaper if we are to be sustainable and if the beekeepers are to be sustainable in how they operate and the money that they make. So once we really kind of flush out some of this adulteration that's happening, you're going to see honey prices increase. There's no doubt about it. The other thing that's going on is you'll get these monofloral crops, monocultural crops like orange blossom. You see orange blossom honey. You see blueberry harvest honey. These are crops oftentimes in the United States, right? Florida for the orange blossom. Blueberry, I think, is maybe California or Minnesota. But regardless, these are monocultural crops that are getting sprayed like crazy with neonicotinoids, a new brand of pesticides, with all kinds of chemicals. That's getting in the honey. That's been shown already. A study just came out this last fall showing 86% of North American honey has a cocktail of pesticides. That stuff's getting in the honey. That's not honey's natural state. So when you're buying that stuff, I mean, that's hard to say that that's a high quality honey that you're buying. So all of our honey tests free of pesticides and GMOs. This is the price of real honey. That's part of why our honey, we don't sell it super cheap. We don't buy it super cheap. I met with beekeepers that I could have bought honey from a lot cheaper, and it was pesticide ridden. It was homogenized. A lot of it's ultra filtered, pasteurized. That's not what we're in this business for. So if you want real honey that's raw, that is pure, doesn't have toxins and chemicals in it, that is unique, monofloral, and that has antibacterial properties that are really high, like our Ulmo honey, there is a real price to pay. So this indeed is a video justifying, right, the prices we charge, which, by the way, I've had quite a few people tell me I should be charging about double because it's worth it, and I can, and I could, and be successful, but I'm also not trying to gouge people just because I can. I want to offer this at the most affordable price I can. But the international honey prices are not real prices for real honey. It is adulterated. They have pesticides in it oftentimes. The beekeepers will supplement the feed of the beekeepers with sugar water, so the bees are making honey from sugar water that doesn't have any of the nutrients, phytochemicals, etc., antibacterial properties. So these are all things to consider when you're purchasing honey. I hope this was informational for you. It's a little bit longer video than I normally do, but there's a lot of information I wanted to give you. So if you stuck through the whole video, congratulations, and we'll catch you for the next episode.